We are live now. Welcome everybody to the Spring Bookathon. We're really excited to have you join us for these sessions. And we've got some great authors with us today. As Anne Shade has so perfectly put in her background. Yay! These are stories from In Our Words, which is queer stories from Black, Indigenous, and people of color writers, which is quite the mouthful. But it's a fabulous anthology, and it's been so much fun to work on. So we hope you enjoy your readings tonight. Unfortunately, it looks like one of our authors can't join us tonight, which is just a shame, but that means we've got maybe more time for Q&A. So do pop your Q&A questions up. And with that, we are going to start with Yolanda Wallace, who is reading tonight as Mason Dixon. And let's see, I've got that bio here. Mason Dixon lives, works, and plays somewhere, oh, we're losing people here, and plays somewhere in the South. She and her wife enjoy grilling, traveling, and fighting for control of the remote, as you do. Her books include Charm City, 21 Questions, and Lambda Literary Award finalist Date with Destiny. And she's as Yolanda Wallace, she has won 2 Lambda Literary Awards for lesbian romance. So, Yolanda, do you want to introduce your story and give us a reading?
Okay, I'm going to read today from Wash and Set. It is set in one of my favorite places to get the latest gossip, a hair salon. I don't need that anymore because I do my own. I have my wife cut my hair. But it used to be fun going there. And like I said, this is called Wash and Set. Andrea Arsenault pulled into the half-empty parking garage that serves the customers with plane cuts and the rest of the businesses on the block. After she found an open spot to kill the engine of her SUV, set the alarm, and headed up the street. She ignored the admiring wolf whistle of the parking attendant as he checked out her legs. She was half a decade short of 40, but she was often told she looked 10 years younger. Black, as her mother constantly reiterated during their weekly phone calls. Don't crack. Andrea checked her watch. 9:05. It had taken her the full 30 minutes to make her way across town and then some. As she regarded the salon's locked doors and darkened windows, she thought with a flash of panic that Desiree had given up on her and headed home. She had spent most of the crawl through traffic, not listening to the latest installment of her favorite podcast, but trying to remember which one Suzanne's styling specialist Desiree was. She knew most of the salon's employees by name. Cinda handled the kids, Latoria the high school and college crowd, Barbara the 30-somethings and professionals, and Miss Beatrice, the church-going habitués of Amen Corner. For the life of her, though, Andrea could remember Desiree, and it was killing her. Was Desiree the one with the gold tooth and blonde streaked hair who saw most of the club hoppers, or the one with the dusty wig, bad attitude, and sour expression who saw only the most desperate? Andrea searched for a crack in the drawn shades, but found none. She reached through the bars and knocked on the bulletproof glass door. She kept one eye on the street to make sure no one was painting her as a potential target. When she turned back to the salon, the shade had been pulled a little to one side, and a pair of sparkling almond-shaped hazel eyes were staring at her. Andrea finally had a face to put with a name. Desiree was the new hire, the graceful, long-lipped sister with a mile-high turban who saw the incense-burning, ankh-wearing Erykah Badu devotees. She reminded Andrea of her niece, a Georgetown junior who seemed to think that rebellion and Afrocentrism hadn't existed until the multicultural generation had come along. Desiree unlocked the door and ushered Andrea inside. I'll call Barbara so she can give me the 411 on you, she said, locking the door again. She said you're a week late for your wash and set. Would you like to have that done today? Or would you rather go ahead and have a touch-up instead? Andrea unbuttoned the double-breasted jacket of her designer skirt suit and draped it across the nearest chair. Even though she, like most of the bank staff, had been working from home for months, she preferred to dress like she's still heading to the office every day. Tonight, though, she couldn't wait to get back home and slip into a t-shirt and pair of boxers while she plotted her revenge on her boss. She didn't feel his behavior stemmed from a gender bias or even a racial one. At work, the only color that truly mattered to him was green. He acted the way he did because he knew he could get away with it, plain and simple. She hated when he exuded an air of unearned privilege. One day she's going to call him on it, whether it cost her the job or not. Andrea Wheeler regarded the flickering line of vanilla-scented candles surrounding Desiree's station. Sure to provide a delightful ambiance, but they were the only light in the room. How was Desiree going to be able to see what she was doing? Andrea couldn't sit in front of her webcam for the next 3 days looking like a 5-year-old had done her hair. I don't want to hold you up any longer than I already have. A sly smile slowly creased Desiree's angular face. Your time is my time, she said as she tightened the band holding her clear plastic face shield in place. Andrea laughed. Apparently, Barbara also told you that it tipped well. The compensation she left behind was often more than the bill itself. I think the word she used it very well, but that's not quibble. Desiree glided across the room. Her sandal feet moved noiselessly, but the clattering of the cowrie shell bracelet around her right ankle announced her presence. She gestured toward the freshly sanitized chair in front of her. Andrea sat into the chair. When you called, did Barbara offer to come back here and relieve you? Of course, she's got a man at home to answer to. I don't. Is there someone you're wishing to return home to? Desiree asked, reaching to unbutton the top button of Andrea's silk blouse. Or am I allowed to take my time? Andrea felt Desiree's long fingers lightly touch the back of her neck. She turned Andrea's collar under once so it wouldn't stick out above the top of the black plastic smock to be drenched by the torrent of running water when they reached the shampoo sink. I'm in your hands. Not yet, but you will be soon.
Excellent. Thank you so much. That was fabulous. Sorry, starting my video there. Thank you very, very much. I have to say, I loved your story. It was fun. And I think it was just, like you could see the whole thing happening, and the discussion and your description of clothes and everything. It was just wonderful. So thank you very much for that.
Thank you.
Right. Next up, we have Anne Shade. And let's see, Anne Shade is the author of Femme Tales, a modern fairy tale trilogy, and Masquerade, a historical romance. Anne lives in West Orange, New Jersey, and when she is not writing about love, she reads fantasy novels and helps make couples' wedding dreams a reality. Thank you very much. So, Anne, do you want to introduce your story and then give us your reading?
Yes. My story is called The Depth of Love. It's loosely based on Little Mermaid. I'm going back to my fantasy, my fairy tale era. And there's a woman who is grieving over the loss of her mother, and she has been sent away on vacation by her family. And she is at this resort. She's supposed to be trying to help get past the grief that she's been feeling and not being able to get past for the past year or so. And she meets this mysterious woman. And there's this secret that the mysterious woman has. And this is when they first meet. The sound of the waves crashing along the shore outside Lindsay's window would normally lull her right to sleep. But her mind raced with grief that she'd been holding back, concern about her father and how her father and sister were holding up, and guilt about lounging at a resort instead of looking for a job. Lindsay threw off her covers and walked from the villa she was staying in down to the beach steps. It was the middle of the night and no one was about. She found a spot, plopped down dejectedly into the sand, If she had been home, she would have turned on her television to some silly late night show to distract her. But she wasn't home. There was no television in her room, and something drew her to the beach. Lindsay watched the waves crash against the shore and let the grief come. Wasn't that why her family had conspired to get her here, to grieve and heal? Once the tears began, all her locked-away emotions suddenly crashed over her like one of those waves. Why? She yelled at the waves that seemed to grow higher in the moonlit distance as her pain grew. I just want the pain to end. I just want sadness to go away. I just want to understand why, she moaned as her heart broke all over again. Please, please make the pain go away. She pleaded to the stars, the moon, the ocean, the heavens above, anyone who might be listening. Abele swam just ahead of her sisters as they raced to see who would make it home the fastest. She was so focused on beating them that she almost missed the sound of crying drifting toward her on the waves. No, not now, she said in frustration. She and her sisters were just returning home from assisting a small village in Nigeria with an unknown illness ravaging their people. They hadn't been the only spirits and deities who had shown up to assist, but it had been a heart-wrenching task all the same. All she wanted to do was go home and swim freely amongst her people to clear away the darkness the task had brought on. Abele kept swimming, but she couldn't outswim her duty. She slowed to let her sisters catch up. What's wrong, Eb? Ayodele asked as Decca looked on in concern. They were attuned to each other's emotions. Do you hear that? If her sisters heard it as well, then at least she wouldn't be alone in whatever task Mami Wata was sending her on. I hear nothing but the sound of the waves crashing above, Ayodele said. I don't hear anything either, Decca said. Oh, I hear a woman crying out in grief. Ah, well, you are the spirit of compassion, Ayodele said, as if that should have been obvious to her. I know, we've just been away from home for so long. Decca gave Abele a knowing look. You're not thinking of ignoring it, are you? I'm sure there are others who can hear it that can help, Ayodele said, despite knowing otherwise. Do you still hear it? Ayodele asked. Abele sighed. Yes. Ayodele gave her a sympathetic smile. Then you must answer it. The fact that we don't hear it is also proof that it's something special meant for you. Abele knew this. The waters surrounding the islands of Jamaica were Abele's family waters, so the humans on these islands were solely her family's responsibility. Decca smiled and kissed Abele's cheek. We'll see you when you return home. Abele pulled her into a tight embrace. Although I don't hear the call, I do feel this one is different. That we may not see you for some time, she whispered in Abele's ear, then placed a kiss on her cheek. Abele looked at her worriedly. Am I in danger? No, quite the opposite. Be happy, sister, Ayodele said with a mischievous wink before taking Decca's hand and swimming away. Abele shook her head. Adele had the gift of foresight, and Abele hated when she left her with riddles like that. She watched her sisters disappear amongst the school of dolphins, then swam upward until she broke the surface. Please, make the pain go away, the woman's plea was clear. Abele's heart ached with the woman's grief. It was so deep, Abele wondered how the woman had managed it this long. She saw a shoreline in the distance and a lone figure sitting on the beach. With a swish of her tail, she rolled the waves toward the shore. Lindsay felt as if she had turned on a faucet that couldn't be turned off. Although she no longer wailed and moaned, tears still ran down her face. She looked around, surprised no one had come out while she sat there sounding like a wounded animal for the past 15 minutes. Using the bottom of her nightie, she tried to wipe her tears and mucus-covered face, but she was only replacing what she wiped off with sand. So she gave up. With a sigh, she decided to go back to her villa before someone did come out and find her wallowing in her misery. But something in the water caught her attention. She gasped at the sight of a dolphin breaking the surface and riding a wave toward the shoreline. She stood and walked slowly toward the edge of the water. When the animal broke the crashing waves again, Lindsay's eyes widened. Okay, I must really be suffering from some sleep deprivation because now I'm seeing things, she said to herself, as the silhouette of what she had thought was a dolphin looked like a woman's figure with a fishtail. Lindsay watched in fascination as the dolphin, woman, or whatever it was, swam closer to the shore, then disappeared under one last wave before reappearing several yards ahead of her. As the beam of moonlight spotlighted the water, she saw a woman walking toward her. Lindsay knew her tired mind must have been playing tricks on her when she thought the woman had a tail. It was probably a play of the shadows in the water. Then her mind kicked in on the fact that the woman was completely naked. Her wet copper-brown skin glistened, looking as if it were covered in diamonds from the moonlight playing on the water droplets. Her hair was in thick, long dreadlocks. She had a narrow waist that curved softly to a flat stomach and generous hips. A chain with a large turquoise stone was wrapped around her waist and lay temptingly just below her belly button, as if it were an arrow pointing toward the smooth V between her thick thighs. Lindsay managed to tear her eyes away from that tempting sight to look at the woman's face as she slowly walked out of the water, reminding her of Halle Berry in that James Bond movie. It was as if the moonlight was her spotlight, giving Lindsay a detailed view of her beauty. She had light golden brown eyes, perfectly arched brows, the cutest upturned nose, and the reddest Cupid's bow lips, all set in a soft oval face. Lindsay was mesmerized as the woman stopped just a foot in front of her and looked her over curiously. Hello, the mysterious woman said. Lindsay took a step back, unsure whether this was real or hallucination from lack of sleep. Hello, are you real? She asked, knowing how foolish it sounded. I'm very real. What makes you think I'm not? Because I'm exhausted, and it's the only explanation for why a beautiful naked woman just walked out of the water like some goddess in a mythical tale. The woman laughed, and it was like a soft caress along Lindsay's body. Thank you for the compliment. You've never gone skinny dipping before? The woman asked. No. The woman swept her dreads over one shoulder to squeeze water from them, giving Lindsay a generous view of her full breasts. She quickly looked back up, only to meet the woman's knowing grin. You should try it sometime. It's rejuvenating, the woman said as she laid her hair along her back. Are you a guest here? I haven't seen you around. No, I live nearby. I was swimming along, heard crying, then saw you on the beach. Are you all right? The woman asked. Lindsay knew she had been loud, but she didn't think she had been loud enough for anyone out in the water to hear. I'm fine. It must have been a wild animal or something. The woman reached up to gently wipe away something on Lindsay's face near her eye. You almost had sand in your eye. That could be quite uncomfortable. Her light touch felt strangely soothing. Thank you. The woman shivered and wrapped her arms around her body. I didn't expect to stop, so I don't have a cover up. I should probably go back home. She turned back toward the water. Lindsay found that she didn't want her to leave. Wait, I have a cover up you can use. Since you live nearby, you can return it tomorrow. The woman turned back with a beautiful smile. Are you sure? I could swim back the way I came. My home is fairly close to here. Don't be silly. There's no sense in going back into the water and catching a chill. I'm staying here. Lindsay pointed up to her villa. You're very kind, the woman said, placing a soft hand on Lindsay's shoulder. Once again, she felt soothed by her touch. That's it.
Thank you very much, Anne.
Thank you.
That was lovely. I think one of the things about your story is how natural it feels. Like there's mermaids, and it's just, yeah, of course there are mermaids. Like,
Yeah,
you know,
of
of course
course,
they're
yeah.
gonna just like walk up on the beach and flirt with you. Of course they are.
Come on.
Completely naked. Yeah, why not? Yeah, and let's go have a drink, because that's just, yeah. And it just, you get so immersed in it right away. And you feel so bad for the woman on the beach who's just unable to get away from her pain. And what better than a mermaid, right? To like get you out of your funk, right?
Beautiful naked mermaid.
Well, obviously naked. I mean, you know, that's fabulous. Thank you very much, Anne.
Thank you.
Right. And next up, we're going to have Celeste Castro. And Celeste, there we are. Hello, Celeste.
Hello.
And I will read your bio here. So Celeste Castro, she, her, is an American Mexican from small town rural Idaho, where most of her stories take place. She grew up with learning disabilities, though she always kept a journal. In addition to fiction, she's a staff writer with Hispanic Notes, an online magazine for Latinx writers, where she publishes essays and poetry. So, Celeste, you want to introduce your story and give us your reading?
Yes, thank you. Thanks, Victoria, and thanks to Bold Strokes Books. And thanks to all of you for being here and supporting BIPOC authors like myself. I'm Celeste Castro, and my short, Pale Moon Rising, is about a group of bird researchers who are on assignment in northern Mexico, where they're banding great crested caracara, which is a member of the falcon family. The researchers' days involve scaling cliffs, banding birds, and telling stories to pass the time as they are in the middle of nowhere. A morbid tale rings close to home, the story of the Puchen, a blood-sucking shapeshifter who appears every 3 years during the summer solstice and is said to strike when the pale moon rises. A healthy dose of paranoia is fun for a while, but it soon borders on lunacy and everyone is at their wits' end. The scene that we are stepping into is at the end of Rocio and Jimena's workday. They're taking a load off and they're waiting for their teammates to wrap up their work because it's almost dinner time. And this is the early stage where Rocio's curiosity is peaking considerably. When I returned to the tent after freeing the bird, Rocio was on her phone again. Oh my God. I found the story that Elena told us this morning about the rancher woman in Bolivia. It's true. She was found dead with half her blood drained. That's fucked, right? I mean, if it's real. I slept into the camping chair. It's definitely fucked. I closed my eyes and enjoyed the hot summer breeze while Rocio obsessed over the story. You know what's creepy? She said a short time later. This rancher woman died with a smile on her face. Who the hell would include that in an eyewitness statement? I've seen you pass out with a smile on your face, Rocio laughed. Seriously, though, can I see the article? I asked. Trigger warning. The website includes photos. Rocio handed me her phone. I scrolled through the webpage and grimaced at the images of the poor rancher woman, and my neck began to ache along with my back. I arched forward, trying to work it out. A feeling of familiarity rushed over me. This was odd. Had I been there before? This was going to drive me nuts. Does the website predict where the Puchen will turn up next? I asked and handed the phone back to Rocio. Rocio furiously scrolled through the webpage. Oh, I don't think so. It only tracks where the attacks took place. There doesn't seem to be any rhyme or reason for what location it chooses next. And get this, the Puchen paralyzes its victims by staring at them. Like this, I asked, lifting my shades. I leaned towards her. I opened my eyes as wide as I could, staring at her, latching on, holding her in my embrace, searching, remembering. Rocio's eyes widened. Her smile faded. I couldn't hold it together. We erupted in laughter. Are you making fun of me? Rocio smirked and then cleared her throat. Kinda. I took the opportunity to kiss the smirk right off her face, frustrated when Rocio pulled away. You know, I believed everything about the Puchen until I read that whole paralyzation by staring bit. Why was that the deciding factor, I asked? Well, as I said, according to the legend, the Puchen stares at its prey to paralyze it and then sucks its blood. How would anybody know that? Every story I've read is about someone who's died. There's not one eyewitness, victim, or any other account from someone who's lived through an attack to tell the story. Thus, how would anyone know that the Puchen paralyzes its prey before sucking their blood? Autopsies can tell if there are toxins in the body before death. That's probably how they know. Does an autopsy tell you if toxins were administered via someone staring? Maybe someone's interviewed an actual Puchen. Ever think of that? Rocio laughed. Hello, Mr. Huge and Scary Bat. Impressive wingspan and fangs you have there. Is it true that you can paralyze? She froze in place. We started laughing. Want to know what I really think? She asked. Of course. A deranged, ritualistic serial killer is on the loose and hiding under the guise of an ancient legend. A man was ripped in half. Oh, it's nothing. It's just the Mothman. A woman was found strangled to death. Oh, it's the snake-headed dog. It's a serial killer, and I know it. That's been killing people the same way for hundreds of years, I asked. That's a damn old serial killer. Oh, maybe he's a vampire. But do vampires actually kill their prey? She asked. It's about 80-20, creating new vampires and killing innocent people. And do you know this how? I folded my arms behind my head and leaned against the chair. Interview with a vampire. Rocio let loose a single-syllable laugh. What if serial killers are in fact cryptids, ancient legends manifested through evil people? That's deep, Rocio deadpan. Thanks. And also disturbing. Thanks. We shared a hand-rolled cigarette while we waited for our team members. Kara floated in the breeze that blew against the sand and blue-colored backdrop. A couple of intense gusts of wind threatened to carry our canopy tent across the landscape, but it never did. Can you imagine having a superpower where all you do is look at someone and they freeze? Rocio asked. Actually, yes. My mom can do that. Rocio turned towards me. I think mine can too. So that is the end of my reading. I thank you for listening. If you liked what you heard, please pre-order In Our Voices. I know the link is in the chat. And after today, you can find me at writerceleste.com. And my new full-length book, Prize Money, A Rodeo Romance, is coming out May 11 with Interlude Press. And in closing, this anthology was in response to the lack of diversity in publishing, and this is only part of the solution. So here's how you can help. Request books written by BIPOC authors for purchase consideration at your local libraries. Add literature by BIPOC authors to your local Little Free libraries, and tell publishers how much you've enjoyed their published books by BIPOC authors and that you want more. Thanks again.
Thank you, Celeste. That was lovely. Thank you very much. And thank you too for kind of giving people ideas how to help too. Because somebody else has already said, you know, that it's great to read these stories when they're not part of the BIPOC community. So thank you very much. Excellent.
You're welcome.
And Celeste, I have to say, there's a great twist at the end of your story too. And I think readers will really love that when they come to it, because it's so kind of tongue in cheek and there's lots of banter and it's a lot of fun. And then you've got this fabulous twist at the end. So yeah, really nicely done. Thank you.
Thank you.
I loved picking that story for that twist alone. It was just like,
yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and introduce myself in the third person because why not? You know, we all have voices in our heads. I'll just let this be mine. And then I'll do a quick reading as well. So Victoria Villaseñor is a Spanish American living in the UK with her wife, and she believes that humor and a bit of fantasy can keep us all going. So there's my third person bio, and I'll be reading from Granddaughter of the Dragon, which is a bit of a fantasy story that comes out of Spain. Abuela, tell me the story of the dragon and the blackbird. I smiled down at my sweet granddaughter, who had yet to understand what she would one day become. It was good she loved this story so. It was part of her destiny. Get in bed, mija. Please. She was nothing if not persistent. I climbed up next to her and noticed that she wasn't far from my own height. So she was going to take after one side of the family instead of the other. So be it. Calmate, mija. Lay down and I'll tell you the story of the Aloha and the Vibria. She snuggled under the light throw I'd had since I was a child, a magical gift I'd always treasured. The faint blue highlights in her hair shone in the moonlight sneaking in through the window. The moon liked this story too. She was always hovering when Lydia wanted a story of any kind, but especially this one. I glanced out the window and smiled at her, letting her cold passion fill me, as it did so many nights. I toyed with a strand of Lydia's hair as I thought of the story. Once, there was a blackbird, the most beautiful blackbird in the world, Lydia corrected me quickly. Once, there was the most beautiful blackbird in the world, I said, smiling at her. Her name was Maria, like yours. Lydia tied a piece of her hair around mine, deep red, threaded around deeper black. Would you like to tell the story tonight, mi amor? She giggled. No, you tell it. She snuggled deeper into the pillow. Her name was Maria, and she was a very special blackbird. She was an aloha. I tickled her chin. What's an aloha? A beautiful water woman who uses magic to make the world a better place, and she can change into a blackbird. Very good. Maria loved helping people, but she always had to be near fresh water. Salt water wasn't good for her because it got in her feathers and made them itch and break. And when she was in female form, she liked to bathe in warm water to keep her skin young and beautiful. Lydia poked at me. What did she look like as a woman, Abuela? She'd never asked me that before. The Aloha are small women. They're all very short and petite, and they have long red hair, so dark sometimes that you can't tell if it's red or black. Their eyes are blue, like the water that gives them life. And they have beautiful smiles, and they stay young-looking for many, many years. She sighed happily, still playing with our hair. Maria had always liked helping people, but one day a terrible illness came to the village. Maria helped everyone she could, but many people began to die. They were angry and scared, and they turned on Maria, who had only ever tried to help them. Mala gente, Lydia whispered. They were mean to her, but they weren't bad people, not deep down. They were scared, and when people are scared, they can be mean. I caressed her head, hoping she'd never find that out for herself. So Maria went away from her beautiful lake, away from the scared people. It took her a long time to find a lake that was perfect, even though she tried many. Some were too cold, some were too sandy, some were even too hot. But one day, she found just the right one. There were no people nearby to get angry with her, and there were lots of trees for her to sit in and sing her blackbird song. Plus, there was a big cave, big enough for a dragon. Lydia tugged on my hair. Do you want to ruin the story for the moon? Lydia rolled over and looked out the window. Sorry, Luna. She turned back to me. She knows it as well as I do, you know, she whispered. I know, I whispered back. Maria decided this would be her new home. She bathed in the perfect lake and let it soothe her dry skin. Then she turned into a blackbird and played in the water, letting it clean her beautiful feathers until they gleamed like the night sky once again. And the moon came out to play too, and tried to catch the blackbird in its beams. But the blackbird swam and flew and hopped, and together they played through the night. Lydia frowned and sat up to look out the window again. Why can't I ever get away from Luna? She always catches me. Are you an aloha? I asked, wondering what she'd say. She tilted her head, thinking deeply as only a child can. No, she said, confident in her answer. I admit my heart sank a little, but I made sure not to show it. Well, then Luna will always catch you. Only an aloha or a bruja can outrun the moon. Or a monster, but we don't talk about those, do we? She frowned and dove back under the blanket. I don't like the monsters. She curled against my shoulder and resumed playing with my hair. sometimes the monsters are just creatures people are afraid of. Like Maria, people don't understand them, so they say they're bad. It was important, so important that she understand this. Sorry, thank you very much. So thank you everybody for reading today. And I mean, you kind of went through all the submissions as they came in, and we worked together on these. And what did you enjoy most about pulling these submissions together?
Being able to read them and to know that I'm about to give some new authors a voice, as well as a new voice to already established authors, but also getting to work with you. I was like, okay, yeah, I'm not going to say no to that. But just the opportunity to bring forth new authors and voices, and to be able to read so many stories. They were so diverse and just all over. I wish we could have put all of them in there, but it would have been a pretty big book.
Yeah.
But it was, it's just, even now, I feel really proud of this project and that I got to be a part of it.
Excellent. Yeah, thank you. There were some amazing, there were so many great stories.
Too many.
Yeah, there were a ton. Just as a reminder to everybody watching, please do pop any questions into the Q&A. We would love to have the chance to chat with you about stuff. So please pop them into the Q&A and we'll keep an eye on these. I have a question to all of you. Well, obviously, Anne, I mean, we know kind of your answer here, but what made this important for you to submit a story to? Yolanda, do you want to talk about kind of why you submitted your stories, please?
Sure. I mean, people call it have a cultural shorthand because we have a lot of common experiences. So we all know just by saying a few words or phrases what we're all talking about. So I wanted to take other people into that world to, like I said, at the hair salon, everybody goes there. We all know what it's like to sit there underneath that dryer getting your hair done. So I just wanted to bring that to everybody. And I also wanted to test myself because I didn't get the chance to write a lot last year because because of COVID, I had to work remotely from home. So it'd take longer to get my job done. And then once I finished working every day, I didn't have the energy to write. Then I had some health issues. So I didn't have the desire to write. So it's like, I need to make sure I still got it. So they gave me a chance to do something short so that I could still work on and say, okay, I was creative. I could still love to write. I could still do that. So it actually gave me the spark back.
Awesome. That's really cool. And I think short stories are such a fabulous way to do that, aren't they?
Yes.
I think it did almost exactly the same thing for me. I kind of got into this whole new writing kind of mode, having to create something new, and it got me back on track. Yeah, for sure. Yeah. Celeste, how about you? What made you decide to, I mean, obviously you already write for Hispanic Notes and do articles and things, but what made you decide to do a short story for this anthology?
Yeah, so this story came up as a part of a mentorship that I was a part of. I was mentoring a young up-and-coming writer, and we were practicing writing stories based on interviews of subject matter experts. And I am a self-proclaimed subject matter expert of wine, and they are a bird researcher, and Samir was in Bolivia at the time researching birds, and so I asked them questions about that. And so we came up with short stories together, and then I saw the call for proposals in our words, which actually came out as a response to the lack of diversity. There was a lot of, in publishing, there was a lot of back and forth online about, lack of diverse panels and opportunities. And it was back when, during the murder of George Floyd. And so I thought that I just wanted my story to be out there, and I looked at the opportunity and thought it would be a great home for it, and alongside other BIPOC authors. Very
cool. Excellent. Great answer. Thank you. How about you, Anne? I mean, obviously you were going to put a story in because we were working on the anthology, but why else would you, maybe if you weren't, say, why else would you have put your story in?
One reason was it was a challenge. As you know, that story was a lot longer. I don't know how to condense. I write too much. So it was a good challenge for me to be able to add a nice a nice short story with the beginning, middle, and end that left people satisfied. But also that particular short story, I wanted to show something other than, I wanted to show something that you wouldn't consider an African-American story. But what many people don't know is Mami Wata is you probably know this. Mami Wata is the goddess of the water spirits and the serpents on land. And I was doing research for something else that I'm working on, and I saw that. I said, ooh, Little Mermaid. And she's coming to save a woman in grief at a resort. What more could I ask for? So I want to do something different and to add to the culture and the creativity that was being put to this work. And just because it feels good to be able to share something like that with other people and for them to see the different shades of our community. Like with, Yolanda's story, it's the hairdresser. And ironically, I was at the hairdresser a few weeks ago and thought of that story and was telling people, oh, you have to read this short story. And the same thing with Celeste. There's cultural myths and stories and history that a lot of people don't know that's interesting. And I just wanted to add a little bit to that.
Nice. Very cool. Very cool. I think I felt the same. Like I don't often write, because I write so much fantasy and science fiction, I don't often take into account the Latina side of it. And I mean, in one of my books, I have, a Mexican Haitian character, but in others, they have wings and fangs as opposed to any kind of particular background. So I think for me too, it was that fun of bringing the Latina kind of stories into existence. That was so much fun. So we do have a question up on the Q&A, which is very cool. So Tammy Lynn says, these stories sound amazing. I'm so pleased that BSB is featuring BIPOC writers. I hope this moves us a few steps closer to understanding your lives. Can you share your thoughts and dreams as to how your writing can have a positive impact on the lives of others? That's a fantastic question, Tammy. Celeste, do you want to have a go first at this one?
Sure. I wrote, just to give an example of this rodeo romance that I wrote called Prize Money. And what I wanted to do with that book primarily is show a great romance, first and foremost. And I also wanted to, through it, address the lack of diversity and representation in the sport, and also help shatter the myth of the American rodeo, which has really heavy Hispanic influences that were essentially just cut out, replaced by John Wayne, and this macho mindset. But it actually has a very rich history. And so through my writing, it's kind of my way of reclaiming my narrative and telling a story where anybody can see themselves being the center of attention and elevating their stories to the light that had been previously buried. And so that's kind of what I hope to do through my books. And also writing from, most of my stories take place in small town rural Idaho. Like that's really important to me too, just knowing that people can come from small places and do great things.
Oh, that's lovely. Thank you. What a lovely answer. Thank you. Yolanda, how about you?
I've had a couple of interactions with fans that let me know that what I wrote actually meant something to them. The best part was I met someone at a Pride event once, and she said that she and her partner actually used some of my words from Rum Spring as part of the wedding vows. So it's like,
oh wow!
I know. She said they met, they loved the book, and then they actually quoted part of it as they were standing at the altar. It's like, don't make me cry here, but that was so touching. And then before War Within, I had another reader reached out to me to say that she was an older woman, more mature woman, as she made me say, and she had never seen a lesfic that features more mature characters. And so she's like, I need more of that. So it's like, I will do that eventually. And so it's good to know that, when readers reach out to you to say that they loved their book and what they loved about it, and that they saw themselves on the page. So that's why I keep going, because writing is hard work once it's done and you look back at it and then you hear from the readers to how much it meant to them. It just keeps you going.
Yeah, I totally agree. That's a great answer, Yolanda. Thank you. How about you, Anne?
What keeps me going with this writing is knowing that I'm putting positive, a positive look on the African American community, on African American queer women, and on African American love. It's not featured enough. Love stories in the African American community alone is so rare, especially beautiful, romantic. I mean, Black women and Black couples can have fairy tales. They can find their prince or princess charming. It doesn't have to be all about the strife and the struggle of, what you have to go through. You can have romantic, sweet moments. And that's something that is important to me to share, as well as all my characters being of, people of color, women of color. That's a major point with me. One I have coming out, the woman is half Puerto Rican, half Black. So I don't just focus on African American color, but just people of color, characters of color. And I think the representation of strong, beautiful, loving Black women is just like the only thing that keeps me going and the only thing that will continue to. I was asked once, well, are you ever going to write a non-Black main character? And my answer to that, I can definitely say no, because it's not what I want. It's not me. I'm an African American woman of color. And I started writing these stories because I wanted to see myself in that. And that's what's going to keep me going.
Excellent. Another fabulous answer. Thanks, Anne. That's awesome. Okay, so we have another question for the Q&A. Understanding that the first importance is to increase the representation of an opportunity for BIPOC writers, do you feel, how do you feel about non-BIPOC writers attempting to address the issue by including more characters and diverse cultural backgrounds in their own work? If it's done respectfully and genuinely, is it okay? I think that's a great question, and I think it's one that's definitely a big question in the writing community as a whole right now. Yolanda, how do you feel about kind of non-BIPOC writers, including people of diverse backgrounds in their writing?
Yeah, I find as long as they have it's actually a lived-in character, not just a stereotype. If you get it right, if it's perfect. I mean, because everyone's book should represent how the world is. No one has just one race or one sex or one gender in their life. So if you can tell the story and make sure that it is an accurate story, an accurate representation, I don't care what color you are, you can write that character.
Yeah, great. That's a great answer. Yeah. Anne, what do you think?
I think they can. I think it's good if they add a diversity. In my books, I don't just write African American characters. My main characters are that. I write other characters of other cultures there. But one author actually asked me if I would read her work because she was adding a main character that was African American, and she's not. And it was good knowing that she was willing to take that step to make sure she wasn't offending anyone and she was getting the culture and the even just the language correct. There's some, depending on the time and the culture and the era, there's certain ways you wouldn't speak. There's certain ways that we didn't, like certain names, we wouldn't be given a fancy name when during like the early slave era, late slave eras, we were named after people, we were named in certain ways. So if you're going to give your character a name that fits that time, you can't, give them something fancy like, Jean-Marie or, because that's just not, you have to make sure you get the culture correct. And I think if the writer is willing to, use the resources of their fellow African-American or BIPOC authors, then, I don't see any problem with that.
Excellent. Very nice. Yeah, sensitivity readers are a majorly useful thing, aren't they?
Yes.
And I think that goes across everything, doesn't it? If you're writing outside your own experience, it's good to find a sensitivity reader to make sure you're not putting your foot in it when you're genuinely trying not to.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Right, Celeste, what do you think?
I think my feedback echoes Yolanda and Anne's feedback, and I'm a huge proponent of beta readers and sensitivity readers as well. And that's really where you're going to get that feedback in more like, and it might not even just like looking out for things that are offensive, but more looking for like, hey, have you thought about your character, what your character thinks about living in a small town and what that must feel like as being like the only Mexican American in their school, just helping them kind of dig deeper into what it means to represent a background that's not their own. But yeah, I mean, I own my own experience as I am a self-proclaimed American Mexican. But I know that there are other experiences that are not mine. And so it's, it's not my position to say who can or cannot represent how they feel. But yes, use beta readers and sensitivity readers.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And I think as an editor, my advice is always why. Why are you including these characters? And are you doing it to tick a box? Or are you doing it because they belong in the story? Because that's a really important distinction. And if you're going to put diverse characters in, make sure you're doing it because it matters to the story and to the characters and to the world you're building, and not just because you feel like you should throw somebody in who is different from you. And be very glad that I'm not your editor. So I think that brings us right toward the end of our time. I'll say again that the link for the book is in the chat. So please do click on that and read a fantastic anthology of really amazing stories, and get in touch with the authors to say, that you enjoyed their stories, and don't get in touch if you didn't. But really, it's been an absolute pleasure and an honor to work on this. As a Latina editor, I write under Bray Willows because Villaseñor doesn't really trip off the tongue. But it's always been a really important part of my identity, and being able to work on this fabulous anthology with such a range of stories. Anne did an amazing job choosing, and I think it's great that Bold Strokes jumped in and put this together. So with that, I think I will say thank you to Yolanda, Anne, and Celeste, and to everybody who came and joined us tonight. Thank you, and click on the link and get in touch with us.
I say one quick
Anne.
thing.
Yes, Anne.
I just want to thank everyone that submitted, those that made it in and those that didn't. The ones that didn't, if you happen to see this or listen, please do not give up. Please continue to work hard and continue to submit your work, because your voice is important. Your voice needs to be heard. So don't let one no turn you away, because we all want to see your work, and all the stories were awesome. So that's it.
Yes. Great point, Anne. Absolutely. Unfortunately, rejection is part of the business of writing. And we all get plenty of rejection letters. But yeah, absolutely. Keep trying and keep putting your voice out there, because your voice matters. Yeah. Definitely.
Who knows?
Thank
we
you,
may
Anne.
do another one of these.
You never know.
Hint, hint.
Excellent. Right. So with that, we'll say good night. Thank you, everybody. Bye.
Bye.